evening to you, and thanks so much for joining us on the news at 6. This is Radio Nigeria, Harmony 103.5 FM, Idofia, Kwara State. And first, the headlines. House of Representatives says malaria remains significant health challenge in Nigeria. Nigerian Women Trust Fund wants more representation of women in politics. World Health Organization laments high risk of biological hazard in Sudan. This news is streaming live on www.radionigerianorthcentral.gov.ng. Now the news in detail. I am Olusegun Ajileye. Federal government has expressed worry that Nigerian students in war-torn Sudan are trying to find their way to borders of Egypt, Eritrea, Ethiopia and Chad on their own. This was contained in a statement signed by the Director overseeing the Office of the Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Janet Olisa, and the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Dr. Nasir Sani Guazo. The government noted that while concerted efforts were being made to evacuate the students, parents should advise to remain calm and maintain constant communication with officials of the Nigerian Embassy in Sudan for instructions and updates. The statement also notes that the armed forces, National Intelligence Agency and international humanitarian organizations such as International Organization for Migration are working to immediately evacuate the students and other affected Nigerians in the country. They are all directed to reach the embassy officials on supplied telephone numbers and assured that concrete plans were underway to deploy air transport to evacuate all stranded Nigerian citizens through the identified safe transit area back to Nigeria in safety and dignity. House of Representatives has noted that malaria remains a major significant public health challenge in Nigeria. House spokesperson Benjamin Kalu, representing Bende Federal Constituency, Abia State, emphasized this in a statement to commemorate this year's World Malaria Day. According to him, 4 African countries including Nigeria accounted for over half of all malaria deaths worldwide, noting that lack of use of local content is hindering the fight against the disease. The lawmaker said the key areas of challenge to address the malaria burden in Nigeria have been issues of donor dependence for malaria intervention in the country. He added that the 9th National Assembly has identified lack of domestic financing and lack of use of local content in terms of production and patronage of local manufacturing of long-lasting insecticidal nets and anti-malaria drugs as a key challenge. The theme of this year's World Malaria Day is Time to Deliver Zero Malaria, Invest, Innovate and Implement. World Health Organization WHO has called on African leaders to keep malaria high on their agendas as they allocate resources to health. WHO Regional Director for Africa, Dr. Mashido Moheti, said this in a message during the commemoration of the 16th World Malaria Day in Abuja. She noted that the call became necessary as the global health body malaria, which had been a stubborn public health enemy only in 2021, killed 619,000 people, of whom approximately 96% lived in Africa. Dr. Moeti explained that African region will continue to be hit by this deadly disease, partly because too many people do not have access to preventive and curative interventions. Nearly 30% of the population in most African countries cannot access essential health services, and most people face unacceptably high expenditures on health care. She said malaria affects the most vulnerable, young children and women, whereas about 80% of cases and deaths occur in children under 5. According to Dr. Moeti, noted that the terms of reduction in malaria incidence, 8 countries are on track to meet the 2025 and 2030 Global Technical Strategy target country such as Cape Verde, Ethiopia, the Gambia, Ghana, Mauritania, Rwanda, South Africa and Zimbabwe, and the pace of progress must be accelerated if to achieve the set targets. She added that World Malaria Day gives an opportunity to renew political commitment and bolster investment in malaria prevention and control. Therefore urged member states to redouble its commitment to implement an ambitious and innovative acceleration plan to rapidly reduce the burden of malaria and save the lives of its populations. Nigerian Meteorological Agency (NIMET) has distanced itself from a report indicating possible lightning strikes across the country in the month of May by the Nigerian Lightning Safety and Research Center. In a statement by the NIMET Public Relations Manager, Mr. Muntari Ibrahim, says it did not authorize the NLSRC to issue such weather forecast to the public, as it is the statutory function of NIMET to do so. It further adds that any person who collects, uses or disseminates weather forecast or any other meteorological information obtained from any other source outside the approval of the agency for commercial or public purpose commits an offense liable to conviction. It therefore advises the public to disregard the report by the NLRC, as it could not be responsible for consequences resulting from the reliance or acting upon the said weather information. Similarly, NIMET has warned the general public of these activities of some mischievous persons who are impersonating the Director General, Professor Mansour Matazu, with fake social media account, email and phone numbers to defraud members of the public. It states that none of those accounts represent him or the Nigerian Meteorological Agency. Nigerian Women Trust Fund has called on political parties to take responsibility for the poor representation of women in the country's political space and ensure a level playing ground for both genders. Chief Executive Officer of the fund, Messrs. Mufuliat Fijabi, stated this in Abuja during technical workshop for political parties on gender representative policy making. Mrs. Fijabi decried the low number of women elected representatives in the 2023 general elections, urging political parties to restructure their policies through gender inclusion. She observed that the election showed that the country has a long way to go when it comes to the inclusion of women in politics and women emerging as elected representatives. On her part, Nigeria's resident program director, International Republican Institute, Mr. Santiago Stoker, stressed the need for more strategies to ensure gender-responsive policy making, especially at the party level. You are listening to the news from Radio Nigeria, Harmony 103.5 FM, Idofin, Kwara State. A quick reminder of the stories you've heard so far. House of Representatives says malaria remains significant health challenge in Nigeria. Nigerian Women Trust Fund wants more representation of women in politics. And still ahead, World Health Organization (WHO) laments high risk of biological hazard in Sudan. Now to the rest of the stories. Joint National Association of Persons with Disabilities (JONAPID) Kwara State Chapter has felicitated with Governor Abdurrahman Abdulrazak on his re-election for the second term in office. This is contained in a statement signed by the association's chairman Yusuf Bashir, the General Secretary Anifo Shefatai, and made available to newsmen in Ilorin. According to the statement, the association appreciated the inclusiveness enjoyed during Governor Abdurrahman Abdulrazak's administration, as well as indelible impacts and roles played towards ameliorating the suffering and resuscitating the hope of persons with disabilities in the state. JONAPID also rejoiced with the 3 distinguished senators, House of Representatives and State House of Assembly members elect. The association, however, on behalf of all clusters of persons with disabilities, prayed God to give them the wisdom to pilot the affairs of the state to a promising land. A chieftain of the All Progressives Congress in Kwara State, Engineer Nuruddin Adeyemi Balogun, has commiserated with the Igbomina and, in particular, the Olusin of Ijara Isin over the death of an illustrious son, Justice Adeyinka Oyeloye. In a statement he personally signed, describes the loss of the jurist as painful. According to the statement, Justice Oyeloye will be remembered for his numerous contributions to the development of judicial system in the state. His commitment and diligence, coupled with uprightness, are few of the distinguished characters of the late jurist. It prays that God provides for the family, associates, and Kwara State the fortitude to bear the great loss, and his successors be upheld and protected, and also his soul be admitted to the comfort of Al-Jannah Firdaus. Now on foreign scene. The World Health Organization says there is a risk of biological hazard in the Sudanese capital, Khartoum. This is coming after one of the warring parties seized a laboratory holding measles and cholera pathogens and other hazardous materials, said on Tuesday. Speaking to reporters in Geneva through a video link from Sudan, the WHO's representative Neema Abid explained that technicians were unable to access the National Public Health Laboratory to secure the materials. He said lab technicians had not been able to safely contain the biological material and substances available. Fighting erupted between the Sudanese Armed Forces and Rapid Support Forces paramilitaries on April 15, and according to the WHO's latest figures, the war has claimed the lives of at least 459 people and injured about 4,072. The clashes have paralyzed hospitals and other essential services and left many stranded in their homes with no adequate supplies of food and water. And here is the Harmony Watchword for today. Health is wealth. Take care of your health. And to end the news, here's the recap of the main stories. House of Representatives has noted that malaria remains a major significant public health challenge in Nigeria. House spokesperson Benjamin Kalu, representing Bende Federal Constituency, Abia State, emphasized this in a statement to commemorate this year's World Malaria Day. Nigerian Women Trust Fund has called on political parties to take responsibility for the poor representation of women in the country's political space and ensure a level playing ground for both genders. Chief Executive Officer of the fund, Mrs. Mufuliat Fijabi, stated this in Abuja during a technical workshop for political parties on gender-responsive policy making. We also told you that on foreign news, the World Health Organization says there is a high risk of biological hazard in the Sudanese capital, Khartoum. This is coming after one of the warring parties seized a laboratory holding measles and cholera pathogens and other hazardous materials, said on Tuesday. And that ends the news from Radio Nigeria, Harmony 103.5 FM, Idofia, Kwara State. It was edited by Bukola Olajide and brought to you by Olusegun Ajileye. Do stand by for the news broadcast in Yoruba language.